So banks are crashing today as there's real concerns about Wall Street, also what's going on with our economy, as Donald Trump's attacks on America continue. And I want to go over what's going on as, again, the government is still shut down. This is the headline then today. Regional banks, Jefferies shares tank as concerns about sour loans grow on Wall Street. And if you guys lived through the great financial crisis, you'll remember it's basically a bunch of bad loans. That's basically what it boils down to. And we've been talking about this the last couple of weeks. First, there was the tricolor situation that was auto loans. Then it moved over to the First Brands. Both these companies declared bankruptcy. Then we found out that UBS and Jefferies were exposed. And now we're finding out that there's yet more banks exposed to this stuff. And essentially, just put it in the most simplest terms, the U.S. economy is based on debt, essentially what it is, right? You need to buy something today, you borrow money, and we're trusting you to pay it back, right? And then when someone, is collecting on your debt, they borrow money, and then they're like, okay, I'll pay the other person back. And then everyone trusts each other to pay each other back. And then someone else is like, you know what? I'm going to take all these loans together, package them up, sell them to someone else. And then I guess we trust each other to pay each other back. Now, what happens, though, if we quit paying each other back, right? And it turns out that we're all connected to this stuff. And then it's like, oh my God, how many people are exposed to these things? Again, this is the U.S. system. U.S. regional bank shares sink on credit worries after fraud disclosures, right? And these kind of things develop then that no one wants to tell you the truth about this stuff. The best way to think about this is like, among your friends, how often do you just like, hey, this is all my bank stuff. This is what's going on, right? Or here's another just very simple example. It is very, what's the right word to say, embarrassing, I guess you could say, or shameful if, say, like a friend invites you to go out to like a bar. And I'll tell you the truth, like when you live in LA and some of these bars are like $20 a drink, you're just like, man, I can't afford that. but then it becomes like kind of shame if you tell your friends like, I just can't afford that. Do you see what I'm saying? And so what happens to a lot of people, and I've used an example of drinks in LA, but just for example, what happens to a lot of, people, companies, et cetera, is you don't want to show financial weakness. That's essentially what it ends up boiling down to. It's always like keeping up with the Joneses, or if you want to talk about markets, it's showing your shareholders that everything's great financially, everything's going good. And so you usually don't want to disclose if things are sour. However, when people do figure out, they start to figure out, okay, how can we unload these bad debts and do it quietly before, Wall Street finds out, et cetera. But I think that there could be so much exposure to this stuff. It could get really scary and really ugly, in my opinion. There's a lot of stuff going on. You may know some of these banks, may bank at them. Actually, these are all regional banks here. It says, and these are all, and the Western Alliance and Zions banks were the ones named, but again, they're all kind of tied together. M&T Bank, Comerica, Regions Financial, Citizens Financial Group, Fifth Third Bank, Key Corp, Capital One Financial, East West Bank Corp, Western Alliance, and Zions Bank Corp. So the way these things are traded, they're all kind of in the same kind of ETFs. And so if one starts selling off, it drags everything else down. But there's real concerns in the economy. And this also came out today that it turns out you're paying the tariffs, which not that shocking. I think you already know that. Tariff costs to companies this year to hit $1.2 trillion, with consumers taking most of the hit. Now, I want to put this stuff together for you guys. So first is Trump's immigration crackdown has really hurt the economy. I'm just being frank with you guys. If workers aren't showing up, then workers aren't necessarily paying back their loans. Or if companies are depending on said workers, then they're not paying back their loans. Or just not even necessarily tied to immigration, if consumers as a whole having a really, really tough time due to the tariffs, then they're not paying back their loans. And again, our whole system's based on debt. So it just hurts everyone, essentially is what it is. We're all connected. I want to make sure that's clear. And then this was coming out with like, okay, how much of the tariffs are we going to pay? So this is interesting. So they actually asked a bunch of people. I'll read it here. It says, in a white paper released Thursday, the firm said its estimate of additional expenses for companies is probably conservative. The price tag comes from information provided by some 15,000 sell-side analysts and 9,000 companies. So point being, we got a lot of data on here. And this is what they say. They say the source of the $1 trillion squeeze are broad. Tariffs and trade barriers act as taxes on supply chains and divert cash to governments. Okay, so I think you guys know this. It's a tax. Let's read a little bit more here. With real output declining, consumers are paying more for less, suggesting that 2/3 share represents a lower bound of the true burden. And so the argument is, how much are consumers paying of the tariff? So for example, this says here, the firm says just 1/3 will be borne by companies, and that would mean 2/3 are borne, meaning that 2/3 of the tariffs slash taxes are being paid by consumers. It could be anywhere in that range. So companies will eat some of it, but ultimately you're going to end up paying, which is not shocking. I think we know this all the stuff already. But I just want to, again, put it all together to where if you crack down on immigration, right, that hurts the economy. Then you crack down and tax people more on the stuff that they buy, that hurts consumers. And people are just struggling to tread water, which is a phrase that we've been talking about when you describe the economy. Or the Fed came out with their beige book, and I think it was only 3 sectors that seem to be doing okay, or districts, I should say, should be doing okay out of 12. The other 9, not great. That was from the Fed beige book we just saw in the last video. Or you have the United Airlines CEO. They're saying, hey, if the shutdown continues, it's going to hurt bookings, right? So there's a quote from him. And I just want you to understand, like, all this stuff is connected, right? So if someone can't fly to a meeting or sell something or buy something or whatever, that slows everything. So let's see what they say. United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby said federal government shutdown could hurt bookings if it continues. And I think it's day 16 now. Despite the funding impasse, essential federal employees, including Transportation Security Administration, so TSA, officers and air traffic controllers are required to work without pay. And we've been hearing about how people call in sick, basically, which I completely understand. If you're worried about getting paid, you're supposed to come in, you're an essential worker, but you're worried about getting paid, you got to put food on the table, and you might have to do other things to do that, be it, deliveries, whatever. And then Trump's threatening not to pay you. I completely understand. I'm not, I'll just say this. I understand if someone calls in sick and you're not getting paid. I understand that. Speaking, and then the people who do go into work, if you're not getting paid, your morale is really low and it's distracting. I also completely understand. I just want to explain, like, whenever we talk about this stuff, just understand these are real people, and it helps you, like, get this scenario much, much better. Here's more from the airline CEO, United, I think it was. I think that at least for the first couple of weeks, people thought it was going to get resolved about the shutdown. So they just kind of continued business as usual. But as time goes on, as people read headlines and say it's not going to be resolved soon, people start to lose confidence in the government and the government's ability to resolve this. And it's going to start impact on bookings. Right? It's all related. All this stuff is related. And then you got people in the Senate who are just falling down. No, like actually falling down, physically falling down. And I'm not making fun of Mitch McConnell. I'm just saying he's falling down. He's 83 years old. He's actually frozen up a couple of times, like he would just freeze. And I've said the same thing over and over. It's just when it's your time to just retire and go where you need to go, just retire. You should do that. And I think this Mitch falling down today, and if you can find the video if you like, but I just think it's a representation of our system as a whole. We get so ingrained and I guess vested, everyone want to say it, that our team has to win, and regardless of someone's qualified or not, or even has the facility to even do their job. It's just, wow, someone in our team, and we need to make sure that they stay there. And I think he wants to serve till like 2027, but he's just clearly not fit. So it just shows how dysfunctional government is. I'll just put it that way. Now, I also want to make it clear, not everyone in the Senate or in Congress is like this, right? It's not. But we need to have a system in place, or what's a better way to say it? Here's a better way to say it. Because incumbents have such an advantage regarding the money situation or their various connections, it's harder for new challengers to come up. And I wish people would just be honest about these kind of things, and this would be better for all of us if we were picking I'll just say this, young blood to come in. And I think we need a new generation. We have a generation of people in Congress that have been there way too long. And that goes from both sides of the aisle. I just want to make that clear. And it's just, it's frustrating because you see it happening. I'm not wishing any will harm on Mitch McConnell. I'm just saying that this just represents our system. So then what's going on today then with the Trump people? And I talk about the shadow economy thing to where, for example, New English exam sidelines 6,000 truckers testing U.S. supply chain. So basically, they taken truck drivers off the road. That's basically what it boils down to. And there's a lot of jobs in America that I always wonder, will we ever find out the answer to this one? Maybe we already know. I'd like your opinion on this one. So, for example, can we get Americans to drive trucks? Can we get Americans to work in the farms? Can we get Americans to roof houses, do all these kind of jobs that immigrants do? I think that's the question. And there's a couple ways this could play out. So one would be, let's say, we put in stricter regulations and we just get rid of all immigrants, right? Essentially Trump's point of view on this. Okay, so who's going to do all these type of jobs, be it at hotels or cooks and these kind of things? Will Americans do these things, right? If they don't, Elon Musk and the tech bros, their plan is replace everyone with robots and AI to, replace all those workers. But I just don't think we're at that point where we can use robots and AI to do all of these things. Yes, eventually there'll probably be robot truck drivers, and yes, there is technology being developed for this kind of stuff, right? But we're just not there yet. And then the question is, if Americans are then going to do it, let's say you can get Americans to do said things, will Americans accept lower pay, or do you have to pay Americans a fair wage? I mean, how are we going to do that? There's real problems in the U.S. economy regarding all of these things, like just how our country functions. And so then when Trump starts tearing stuff down, be it with higher tariffs, higher costs for everyone, or major crackdowns on immigration, then you start to see this stuff show up, right? The banks start crashing because, again, you got a bunch of bad loans. Essentially, is what it ends up being. And how wide will this thing go? So we're going to keep tracking this story. I've been talking about this the last couple of weeks, but today it was really ugly in the market. So please be careful out there. Thank you for your time. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this stuff, and I'll catch you all in the next video.